we notice that the tribe of Simeon suffered an extreme decrease in numbers. In Numbers chapter 26 and verse 14, it says, "These are the families of the SIMEONITES, 22,200. So what happened to the SIMEONITES? It seems like they had lost a considerable amount of their tribe. And so the title of this sermon is The Missing SIMEONITES. So what happened to the SIMEONITES, these missing SIMEONITEs? What was their fate? Well, first of all, we really have to look to prophecy to see what is said about them. Now in Genesis chapter 49 and verse 5, Genesis chapter 49 and verse 5, now this is Jacob, known as Israel, given the blessings on his sons. And it says, "Simeon and Levi are brothers. Instruments of cruelty are their dwelling place. Let not my soul enter their council. Let not my honor be united to their assembly. For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they humstrung an ox. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, in their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel." They were blood brothers, not only because they sprung from the same two parents, Jacob and Leah, but they also had the same kind of disposition. They were headstrong, deceitful, vindictive, and cruel. They both lost the birthright blessing because they butchered the tribe of Shechem, who violated their sister Dinah. The irony is that the Levites became butchers themselves, as their duties were to sacrifice animals for the people. Simeon also were butchers in that deed, and they were a warlike people. Many may have taken up the profession of butchers. They were both scattered among the other tribes. Now the Levites were scattered in Israel as they inherit no lands, but they served as priests and servants in the tabernacle in the wilderness and then the temple in Jerusalem. But also they worked in various synagogues and also in some of the sanctuary cities, which we'll hear about a little bit more. So they were serving throughout the land, but they had no land. Simeon only received a small area to settle in, very small, which was within Judah's territory. In Joshua 19, verse 9, it says, "The inheritance of the children of Simeon was included in the share of the children of Judah. For the share of the children of Judah was too much for them. Therefore the children of Simeon had their inheritance within the inheritance of that people." They were eventually absorbed into the other tribes, as the prophecy actually says. But getting back to the numbering of only 22,200, why were there so few compared to the other tribes? Could they have all perished in Korah's rebellion, which we heard about before? Korah's rebellion was mostly Reubenites and Levites. But what about Israel's harlotry in Moab, which is mentioned in Numbers 25, which we'll be looking at in today's sermon? Were the Simeonites the only tribe involved with the Moabite prostitutes? Some believe so, as a Hebrew midrash explains. A midrash is a biblical exegesis by the Judaic authorities, ancient Judaic authorities, using a mode of interpretation prominent in the Talmud. The word itself actually means textual interpretation or study. But according to a midrash, many Simeonite widows were married unto the Israelite tribes after the death of 24,000 Simeonite men following the scandal involving Simri. Is that true? Well, let's look at Numbers 25. Numbers 25 beginning in verse 6. Numbers 25 beginning in verse 6. And indeed, one of the children of Israel came and presented to his brethren a Midianite woman in the sight of Moses and in the sight of all the congregation of the children of Israel, who were weeping at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. Now when Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, saw it, he rose from among the congregation and took a javelin in his hand. And he went after the man of Israel into the tent and thrust both of them through, the man of Israel and the woman through her body. Now according to verses 14 and 15, it was a Simeonite named Zimri who paraded this whore in front of Moses and the people. And it was Phinehas, the Levite priest and grandson of Aaron, who slayed him. Well, this caused a conflict between the two tribes, no doubt. After all, Phinehas just killed a Simeonite priest or prince or chieftain, a high-ranking person. These two blood brother tribes were at the very heart of this event. But were all the dead from the plague that followed, were they all Simonites? The scriptures do not specifically state this at all. So it is very logical to believe that many Israelites other than Simonites were also involved with this sin. Paul refers to this event in 1 Corinthians chapter 10. In 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 8, it says, "Nor let us commit sexual immorality, as some of them did, and in one day 23,000 fell." Paul mentions only 23,000. So is that an error? Well, Paul in his statement is only referring to those who had died from the plague. Those that died from the plague. And not the 1,000 men that were ordered to be slain by God. That is in Numbers chapter 25 and verse 4. It says, "Then the Eternal said to Moses, take all the leaders of the people and hang the offenders before the Eternal out in the sun, that the fierce anger of the Eternal may turn away from Israel." So Moses said to the judges of Israel, "Every one of you kill his men who were joined to Baal of Peor." So there was 24,000 was the total that died on that day. And Paul only refers to the latter number, those that died from the following plague that happened as well. So 1,000 men were slain, 23,000 died from the plague before it was stopped. But still, there's nowhere here where we can find that the slain were only from the tribe of Simeon. What is clear about this day is that a future priest of the tribe of Levi killed a Simeonite chief. This stirred up a strife between these two blood brother tribes. The Levites, well, they already had their appointed positions. But the Simeonites did not. They didn't have nothing. So many believe that some of them may have actually left before the second numbering of the tribes. That Simeonites, they kind of led a little mini exodus from the camp and set out on their own. This may be possible as there were other groups of people in that area of the world which exhibited Israelite characteristics, while the Israelites themselves were in the promised land during the time of the judges. Now both Yair Davidi and Stephen M. Collins comment about these groups in their writings. One was a group of sea peoples who settled throughout the Mediterranean world. Also, they believe that the Spartans of Greece may have been Simonites as well. And we do know that the tribe of Dan actually went into Greece as well. But because of their warlike nature, it seems fitting. And a lot of this is kind of based on the book of Maccabees, where the leader of the Spartans, he actually sent a letter to the high priest in Jerusalem. And in that letter, he actually states in there that they're related, that they're kin. So a lot of that comes from that idea as well. Now, when the tribe of Dan showed up in Ireland around 720 BC, known then as the Tuatha De Danann, a tribe of people also named Simoni also arrived. The spelling of that is Simonii, Simoni. They also arrived, settling in what is now southwest England and Wales. Could this be a remnant of the Simonites? The Simonites which were numbered, the 22,200, they did settle in the midst of the southern part of the tribe of Judah near Beersheba. Not all the groups of Simeon remained among their southern neighbors, though. Some migrated to a town called Gedor, which was about 10 miles southwest of Bethlehem. And 500 men of Simeon, they actually went to Mount Seir, and it's a mountainous region that stretches between the Dead Sea and the Gulf of Aqaba, where they dislodged an Amalekite remnant. And that's mentioned in 1 Chronicles chapter 4, verse 39 through 43. I don't know if everybody can see this map that I'm holding right here, but this is the Dead Sea up here, and here's the Gulf of Aqaba. Well, this whole range right here is Mount Seir, that whole range that spreads there. They actually went there and settled in that area as well. Now in Josiah's time, the Simonites still had their own cities, as was mentioned in 2 Chronicles chapter 34 and verse 6. Simeon was indeed divided in Jacob and dispersed in Israel. In his final blessings of the tribe, in Deuteronomy chapter 33, Moses made no mention whatsoever of this tiny tribe of Simeon. Deborah similarly didn't make any reference to this tribe as well, scattered throughout Israel. God, however, does not overlook them. In the restored prosperity of Israel, prophesied by Ezekiel, Simeon will have his place, positioned somewhere between Benjamin and Issachar. And that's according to Ezekiel chapter 48, if you want to look that up later. So where are the missing Simonites? Well, they migrated to the northwestern part of Europe just like the other tribes did. Today they are most likely descendants of the Welsh and possibly mixed in with the Irish and the English as well. But as the scriptures say, they are mixed with all the tribes of Israel, just as the Levites were. God knows where they are.